This speaker has been recorded at a meeting of Addictive Eaters Anonymous. For more information, visit our website www.aeainfo.org.
My name is Leonie and I am an addictive eater. I came here many years ago because, a couple of reasons really. One, because of the weight that I couldn't keep off because I couldn't stop eating. And two, what drove me here in the end was the fact that I had this craving for food all the time. I thought about food all the time. From a very young age, food was the most important thing in my life. And as years went by and as I tried, I saw it very connected with my weight, because I was of the mind that if I lost the weight and was a normal size, I would be fine. But I knew that what was going on in my head would never go away, which was the obsession with the food. And that obsession led to me from a young age to steal food, to hide food, to lie about food. And if it was inconvenient, however, whatever was happening in my life, I would lie about that too. So I really felt that I had this very secret life with all these, in my mind, terrible things I had done, and I was never going to tell another soul, ever. I tried many things to lose weight. I played a lot of sport. I eventually went to Weight Watchers and lost the weight temporarily, but the craving to eat and the obsession was still there. So even though I got down to a normal weight for a very short period of time, I knew that it hadn't done anything to change the obsession I had with how heavy I was, how thin I was, how much food I ate, and all that lying and stealing that I had done. I tried vomiting, I starved. Eventually I became a Weight Watchers lecturer, which was pretty much the last thing that I tried prior to coming into this food fellowship. And in the meantime, I tried to use my willpower to beat this thing, because I thought I should be able to beat this thing, which was in my head, because, I felt that I was reasonably intelligent. I wasn't stupid. But when it came to the food, I had no resistance. I used to have an A4 sheet of paper, and I wrote down all the reasons why I shouldn't eat, because my eating wasn't just half a packet of biscuits. I was on a diet which would be very strict, quite anorexic, and if I ate anything off that diet, and this went on for years, anything off that diet, I'd basically throw my hands in the air and think, what the hell? Today I'll eat, tomorrow I'll diet. But because I'd had that first thing off the diet that I'd made up for myself, I found I couldn't stop. So my binges were very massive and large. I used to feel very guilty about all the money it cost. I was married, we had 4 children. They had to be fed, I had housekeeping, I had no personal money. So I used the children's allowance from the government, or I stole. I didn't steal from supermarkets. We had close friends and I could go through their tins when they weren't there. Horrible stuff, and I used to feel so guilty, and I was so sure I'd never do it again. So I had all these reasons as to why I shouldn't, I call it eat, apart from whatever food plan or diet I was on. But I would forget about them. In that moment, when the obsession became overpowering in my mind, I never thought, it never occurred to me. And then once I started, I couldn't stop, and then I'd feel so ill, because we're talking large amounts of food. I'd then lie to my husband while I was in bed. I was in bed because I couldn't stand up, because I was so sick with the amount of food that I ate. And as I say, I tried many things before I got here. And I had read about people who ate like I did in the Australian Women's Weekly. And a year or two later, I read about it in the New Zealand Women's Weekly. And back in there, that time, you had to write a letter to try and find. The letter I wrote was to Auckland, and I said, is there this food fellowship in Christchurch? And some kind person wrote back and said, I can give you the telephone number of a girl in Christchurch who, had found a solution to this problem. No, it wasn't the phone number, it was the address, the post office box address. So I had to write a letter again. And this girl eventually got in touch with me. She rang me on the phone, which was really good because I wouldn't have been able to have her at our home, because my husband might have said, what does she want? And I would not have been able to tell him because I'm living this secret life. And so when she did ring me, she told me her story, just a bit like I'm saying now, and I couldn't comprehend it. It was a pretty horrific story. And I thought, my God, thank God I'm not as bad as her. And I said, no, I'm a Weight Watchers lecturer. I've got it all sussed. Thank you very much. 2 or 3 weeks later, she rang me again. How's Weight Watchers going, Leonie? I said, fine. Tell me your story again. So she told me her story again. And I totally identified with it. And she said they had a meeting here in Christchurch. So I said, give me the details. And if I ever need you, I know where to come. And eventually I did, of course, need this fellowship. And I trotted along to my very first meeting, and I hoped that I didn't know anyone there. Those hopes were dashed because I did know someone here, because I had never admitted to anyone that I had a problem, apart from the weight that showed. But this girl was there, and she shared her story. And on the wall were the 12 steps that are up there, and there was somewhere or other, behind me apparently, the Serenity Prayer. And the 12 steps, the first one says, we admitted we were powerless over food and that our lives had become unmanageable. And then it said, we. And I thought, no, this is my problem. And I didn't think I had an unmanageable life. I didn't. But then it said, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Now, at that time, I did believe in a higher power. To me, it was God. God was in the church and God was religion. And I had searched in the church for myself secretly, went to church, prayed, did a lot of praying, and nothing changed. But the fact that God was on the wall didn't frighten me, did not frighten me. But this girl shared her story, and she was putting into practice those 12 steps in her life. And I knew her horrific story. She was quite a bit younger than me. And to me, she looked like the Virgin Mary. She had long blonde hair down to her waist. She was slim, very important to me. She had been, I think it was 18 stone, and there were stones in those days. And she was a normal weight, and she was tall. And what impressed me about her was the fact that she had no guilt. She shared that she had this food addiction, and it was a disease exactly the same as alcoholism. And the solution was the same that could be found in Alcoholics Anonymous. Just the whole program was in that food fellowship, but just changing the words from alcohol to food. So I got that. I comprehended that, even though I had a lot of mixed feelings about a lot of things and a lot of questions. But I asked her to help me. And they had literature out, just like we got here. and I bought and paid for every bit of it, and that was available. And I took it home and I gave it to my husband and told him he had to read it in the hope that he would, because I hadn't been able to tell him about my secret life at all. And I was pretty hard to live with as a result of that, I believe. So I started coming here and started doing what this girl who became my sponsor, she told me what she did. And I thought, I'll do what she does. And what it meant was that I had to be willing to give up the food, basically stop all that eating, but I was powerless to do it. Therefore, I had to find a power greater than myself, personal to me, not what anyone else believed. Needed the willingness to believe there could be a power, is a power greater than myself, that could relieve me and return me into a normal practicing human being, really, return me to sanity, which is the second step. And that was the beginning. And there was a few hiccups in the first couple of months, insofar as I would listen to what my head said rather than what my sponsor said, and I just kept on eating. And it was worse for me then, even though the quantity of food I ate wasn't greater, but the fact that I saw that someone could get well from this addiction, and I couldn't get it. All my efforts, I couldn't get it. And I started going to Alcoholics Anonymous as well with her in the beginning, and I loved it. I loved listening to people who had found a solution to their drinking, their eating, or even drugging, or all sorts of things that happen to us as a result of addiction. So the time came when, after about 3 months, when I realised that for some reason this program wouldn't work for me, but I didn't think I'm going to stop coming. I didn't. I thought I'd just keep coming. One of the really helpful things for me when I came here was to be told you only have to do it for today, just for this 24 hours. And I used to say to myself, I won't have an ice cream today, but I'll more than likely have one tomorrow. And then tomorrow would come, and I still had the obsession and the craving for quite a long time. And I was praying, and I thought, well, I won't have an ice cream today. I reckon I can get to bedtime with my head on the pillow without having an ice cream today. And that went on for, I would say, a year or more. And eventually, what happened to me as a result of working the rest of those steps, which wasn't easy, I had to admit all those things or acknowledge all those things. The lying, the stealing, I had to share it with another human being, as it says in the 5th step, and with a higher power. And those things I never found easy at all. And then I had to go and make an amends to those individuals and those organisations that I had, let's say, ripped off. All that is very difficult. But I persevered, and as time went on, my thinking started to change, and instead of thinking that I was a bad, immoral, basically thief, and I was going to hell when I died, I started to see things differently. As time went on, that obsession to eat and that craving just faded out of my consciousness, and it has never returned. But I have continued to do those same things that I did right at the beginning. I think in the beginning I did them out of fear of eating, and now I don't do them out of fear. I do them because it's the way I want to live. I've shared many times I've had 2 lives. I had the life that I lived growing up, getting married, having family, and all the struggles with the food and the thinking. I've had that life, and then I came here, and another life, different life, mainly in my head, started to happen. And so I reached my rock bottom, and then gradually, as time has gone by, it's got better and better. And it still gets better. It really does. It still gets better, I find. So I'll just finish here with the little reading I was going to read out. This is from literature from Alcoholics Anonymous that all our program is based on. and it probably mentions alcohol, it does, but you can just change the word to food in your mind. And the question is, this one's out of a magazine, can we choose? We must never be blinded by the futile philosophy that we are just the hapless victims of our inheritance, of our experience, and of our surroundings. That these are the sole forces that make our decisions for us. This is not the road to freedom. We have to believe that we can really choose. Now, before I could choose, I had been in this program a long time before I thought, yes, I absolutely did believe that I was a victim of my upbringing, of my life experience, and the reality of my life, and that I didn't have a choice, that I had to eat, and I did believe that. Goes on here that a letter that was written later on, as active alcoholics, we lost our ability to choose whether we would drink or eat. We were the victims of a compulsion which seemed to decree that we must go on with our own destruction. Yet we finally did make choices that brought about our recovery. We came to believe that alone we were powerless over alcohol or food. This was surely a choice, and a most difficult one. We came to believe that a higher power could restore us to sanity when we became willing to practice AA's 12 steps. In short, we chose to become willing, and no better choice did we ever make. And that has been my experience.